The door closes softly behind you, and the world greets you with the hush of an evening sky. The air feels different now, cooler, heavier, touched by something you can't quite name yet. You pause for a moment on the threshold, breathing in a scent that feels clean and new, as if the day has been rinsed of its edges. Then it happens. A single raindrop lands on your cheek. It is small, barely more than a whisper of water, yet it feels like the beginning of something vast. You tilt your face slightly, the way you might lean toward a voice in a quiet room, listening for more. This drop has traveled far to find you. It began as vapor water so light it could float, invisible in the air. Somewhere earlier in the day, sunlight warmed a river, a lake, perhaps even the ocean, and the molecules in its surface grew restless. They shook free from the water below, lifted upward, and joined the sky. This invisible drift is called evaporation. But here, in the soft light of evening, it feels less like a process and more like an invitation. You take your first step down the quiet street, the ground beneath your shoes still dry. Above, the clouds have gathered, thickening in patient layers. They are not solid things, though they look at each cloud as a floating community of countless droplets and ice crystals, so small they can drift with the air. The one above you has been building all day, collecting moisture molecule by molecule. And now it is ready to let go. The first drop that touched you was not alone in its journey. As you walk, you imagine the cloud as a vast, weightless city where droplets form and grow. Inside, water vapor clings to tiny specks of dust or salt carried up by the wind, microscopic seeds around which each droplet can grow. Without these seeds, the vapor would wander endlessly, never becoming the bead of water you now feel. The air tonight is cool, and cool air holds less moisture than warm air. As the temperature drops, the vapor has no choice but to gather, to condense into visible form. You picture the sky quietly rearranging itself, invisible threads twisting into pearls, pearls joining to become a curtain that will soon fall. Another drop lands, this time on the back of your hand. It is slightly cooler than your skin, enough for your nerves to notice and send a signal racing up your arm. Your brain interprets it instantly as water, gentle, no harm. There is safety in this recognition. Not all sensations are so easily trusted, but rain, in its soft beginning, feels like a friend. You keep walking, your steps slow. The sound begins to change, the faint tick of drops on leaves, on rooftops, on the fabric of your coat. Every surface gives its own reply to the rain, shaping the sound into a delicate, irregular rhythm. Somewhere nearby, water gathers at the lip of a gutter and falls in a steady trickle. Already, the evening is becoming an orchestra, one note at a time. You think about the path of each raindrop, how gravity pulls it down the moment it grows heavy enough to fall. The shape it takes, a sphere, is nature's way of holding water together with the least effort. Surface tension pulls inward equally from every direction, sculpting each drop into a tiny planet of its own. The one that touched your cheek only seconds ago was perfect in its form until it met your skin and dissolved into something larger. Your breath deepens. With every step, the day's noise drifts further away, replaced by the gentle insistence of the rain. In moments like this, science feels less like an explanation and more like a way of noticing, as if understanding the journey of water makes each drop more vivid, more alive in your mind. You recall that the water falling now is not new. It has been here for millions of years, endlessly cycling through ocean, air, and land. Some of the molecules in the drop on your hand may once have been part of a glacier or a mountain stream, or even the clouds above a far-off desert. The rain is both ancient and immediate, carrying the memory of worlds you will never see, and yet touching you in this quiet street. The clouds overhead are shifting. In the dimming light, they look like layers of gray silk, each one moving at its own pace. Somewhere inside, currents of warm and cool air are meeting, trading places, stirring the droplets into motion. It's easy to forget that clouds are not still things. They are rivers in the sky, constantly flowing, shaping themselves to the wind. A faint breeze moves against your cheek. It carries the scent of rain more strongly, now something fresh and mineral, a trace of faraway air made new. The breeze tells you the rain will deepen soon, though not in words. Your body understands it before your mind does. Another drop falls, then another. They find your shoulders, your hair, the fabric of your sleeve. The air is cooler now, and you feel the weight of moisture settling into it. You imagine the clouds above, their droplets growing heavy enough to surrender to gravity, their weight transformed into the falling music around you. There is a moment, walking in this new rhythm, when you feel completely part of the cycle, your breath mingling with the damp air, your skin registering each drop, your thoughts slowing to match the steady descent of water from sky to earth. This is how rain begins, with heat lifting water into the air, with clouds collecting it patiently, with the balance of temperature tipping it into release. From invisible vapor to the silver bead on your cheek, the journey is both complex and simple, just as you are a body made mostly of water, moving through the water's endless return. You glance upward once more. The clouds are darker now, their undersides swollen with shadow. They seem closer than before, as though the sky itself is leaning in to listen. Somewhere inside them, more droplets are forming, more stories are beginning. The breeze lifts again, steady this time, as if the atmosphere is drawing a long, slow breath. You pause in your steps. The street ahead is quiet, lined with trees whose leaves are beginning to glisten. The rain is no longer tentative. It gathers in the air, in the sound, in the space between your thoughts. You feel the shift, the sky preparing to move from a whisper to a song. And as you take your next step forward, the air around you stirs, as though the sky itself has something more to say. The breeze that brushed your cheek moments ago grows steadier now. It wraps around you, gentle but certain, as if the sky has decided to breathe a little deeper. The rain is still light, a silver lace falling through the air, yet you can feel that something is shifting above. Wind is the voice of the atmosphere. It is the way air moves to find balance, the way pressure and temperature speak to each other across miles. You imagine the sky as a vast, invisible ocean, its currents swirling not with water, but with air molecules in constant motion, unseen yet everywhere. The air around you tonight began its journey far away. Perhaps it was warmed by the afternoon sun over open fields, or cooled as it swept down from higher, colder air above the mountains. Wherever it began, it carried energy with it, the quiet push and pull that now reaches you in this street, turning the rain at a slight angle as it falls. You take another slow step. Your body feels the wind before your mind describes it, tiny sensors in the skin, pressure-sensitive nerves in the ear canals, all sending their signals upward. The wind is cool, not cold, and it carries the layered scent of the world in rain. Wet soil, fallen leaves, the faint mineral tang from the pavement. Every breath you take now is not just oxygen, it is a blend of stories from places you cannot see. Above, the clouds are restless. They stretch and fold, their edges pulled thin like soft fabric in unseen hands. Air currents at different heights move at different speeds, shaping the sky into subtle, ever-changing patterns. You know that wind is simply air moving from areas of high pressure to low pressure, seeking balance the way water seeks the lowest point. Yet here, under the deepening dusk, it feels more like the sky exhaling after a long day. The sound of the rain changes with the wind. When the breeze passes, the drops fall straight and true, each one making its small percussion against the world. When the wind stirs again, the rain tilts, its rhythm scattered across leaves and windows in a softer, uneven dance. You listen to these changes, noticing how the wind carries sound differently, pushing it forward, pulling it back, stretching it thin across the evening. You picture the air above the ground as layers upon layers, each one moving in its own direction and speed. Some layers are smooth and calm. Others are full of swirls and eddies, turning back on themselves like thoughts that circle in the mind. This motion turbulence can be as small as a swirl behind a lamppost or as vast as the shifting of jet streams high above. And tonight, those layers are meeting here, over you, shaping the rain into gentle, shifting patterns. Your hair moves lightly with the wind. The sensation is subtle, but it reminds you of how sensitive you are to changes in your surroundings. We are built to feel the sky's breath not just through the skin, but in deeper ways. When cooler air brushes against you, the blood vessels near the skin narrow slightly, keeping more warmth inside. When warmer breezes pass, the opposite happens, allowing heat to escape. Without thinking, your body adjusts to each change, finding its own balance in the atmosphere's shifting currents. The trees along the street respond too. Their leaves quiver and turn, their undersides pale in the dim light, each one catching raindrops at a slightly different angle. Branches sway in slow arcs, their movement not forced but guided by the air's invisible hand. Even the rain itself seems to respond to drops changing size, direction, and speed as they fall through this moving canvas of wind. You realize that the breeze is more than just a carrier of rain. It is part of what makes rain possible at all. It can gather moisture from the sea, carry it inland, and meet cooler air that encourages condensation. Without wind, clouds would not wander across the land. Storms would never arrive to feed the rivers and lakes. Every drop that touches you now owes part of its journey to the breath of the sky. You slow your steps, letting the wind move past you, around you. Some gusts are brief, like passing thoughts. Others linger, brushing against your coat and then letting go, as if reluctant to leave. In the spaces between, the stillness feels even deeper, the pause between the sky's inhales and exhales. Your mind drifts to the scale of it all. The same patterns that turn the leaves here are part of the great circulations that span the globe, trade winds crossing oceans, polar jets spinning at the edge of the world. They shape weather, carry heat, and weave the climates in which all living things exist. And yet, they also reach you here, in this small, quiet moment, as you walk home through the rain. You notice how the wind makes the falling water feel more alive. A single drop of still air falls in a straight, predictable path. In wind, each drop becomes a dancer, turning, pausing, and meeting the ground at an angle that feels uniquely its own. You imagine each droplet's journey through these invisible rivers of air, how it drifts and swirls before finding your skin or the earth beneath your feet. The breeze shifts again, cooler now, and you tuck your hands into your pockets. Not because you are cold, but because the gesture feels grounding, like holding a piece of your own warmth while the sky moves freely above. You take a long, slow breath, feeling the air fill your lungs, the oxygen entering your blood, the rhythm of your heart keeping pace with your steps. Somewhere in the distance, a wind chime stirs, adding its delicate metal notes to the rain's soft percussion. The sound reminds you that the air does not only move silently, it carries voices, scents, and even the cool dampness that clings gently to your hair now. You are wrapped in the sky's movement, and though you cannot see the patterns fully, you feel them in every shifting sound and touch. The wind softens, then stills for a moment. You stand in that pause, listening. Without its motion, The rain falls straight again, the drops forming a steady rhythm that feels somehow more intimate, more direct. The air is quiet but expectant, as though something is gathering just beyond your hearing. You think of how wind shapes the world without ever holding it the way it sculpts sand dunes, carries seeds, steers the migration of birds. It is the unseen partner of rain, shaping where it falls and how it feels when it finds you. And in this moment, you feel both small in its vastness and deeply part of its flow. Another breeze rises, steady and calm. It moves through the trees, along the rooftops, and into the spaces between the falling drops. Its touch is almost warm now, carrying the softened scent of wet leaves and distant soil. You take another step forward, your ears attuned to how the rain's voice changes with this breath of the sky. And as you listen to the shifting rhythm, you begin to hear something else. The way each drop lands, each sound unique, each surface giving its own reply. The breeze fades into stillness, and in its absence, the rain's voice grows clearer. Each drop is a word, each surface a page on which the rain writes its story. You pause in your walk, letting the sound gather around you, an unbroken pattern of touch and reply. Rain does not sound the same everywhere. It is shaped by the world it meets. On the wide leaves of a sycamore, it lands with a rounded path, the water bouncing briefly before merging into a bead that slides toward the edge. On the roof above a shop nearby, the drops scatter into a sharper rhythm, metallic and bright, as if the roof is keeping time. Everywhere, the sound is different, yet all of it is still rain. Your ear begins to separate the layers, the high notes of drops hitting thin leaves, the deeper tones of water meeting wood, the muffled thuds where it falls into already formed puddles. Somewhere close, a drain pipe gulps and gurgles as it channels the water downward. Somewhere farther away, rain meets stone in a staccato that feels timeless. The science of these sounds is simple and intricate all at once. When a raindrop strikes a surface, it creates a small vibration in the air, a pressure wave that your ears and brain interpret as sound. The pitch and tone depend on the drop size, the speed of its fall, and the nature of the surface it meets. A thin metal roof vibrates differently from a dense wooden deck. A puddle gives back a sound shaped by its depth and the ripples already moving across it. You step forward again, your shoes meeting the wet pavement with their own rhythm. Beneath your feet, thin films of water form between the tiny peaks and valleys of the ground. Each step pushes this water aside, and your ears pick up the faint squish and slide that accompany your movement. You are part of the rain's orchestra, now your footsteps are another instrument, joining the countless notes around you. Surface tension plays its own role in this music. Each droplet that falls is held together by the attraction between its molecules, like invisible threads pulling inward. When it meets a surface, this tension can cause it to bounce, to flatten into a spreading circle, or to shatter into smaller droplets. Each of these outcomes has its own sound, from the soft click of a drop bouncing on a waxy leaf to the hiss of a splash scattering into mist. You imagine the world around you as a vast percussion instrument, every surface tuned by its shape, texture, and material. Even your umbrella, when you open it, becomes a drum. The fabric stretches tight, each drop striking it with a hollow, softened pat. The rhythm is irregular, yet soothing, a pattern without a pattern, the kind that invites the mind to drift. The irregularity is important. Your brain relaxes more deeply when it cannot predict every beat, when the sequence is varied enough to keep it listening without effort. That's why the sound of rain is so often used to help people sleep. It is structured but never repetitive, natural yet endlessly detailed. Each drop is a variation, a small surprise that still belongs to the same whole. You tilt your head upward slightly, letting a few drops land directly on your face. The sound here is felt more than heard as a close, muted thud as the water meets skin. The sensation travels along with the sound, a reminder that touch and hearing are not entirely separate. Both depend on vibrations moving through matter, both telling you something about the world. Nearby, you pass a tree whose branches are heavy with collected water. Every so often, the wind stirs just enough to tip a branch, and a larger bead of water falls, striking the ground with a deeper, singular note. These drops have taken their time, forming slowly from many smaller ones, growing heavy enough to fall only when the balance shifts. It's a reminder that even in something as constant as rain, there are pauses, moments of waiting before release. You slow your steps again and listen more carefully. Some of the sounds come from above, direct hits from the sky. Others are echoes, water moving from one surface to another. A drop from a branch into a gutter, from a gutter into a puddle, from a puddle into the slow trickle of a street drain. Each stage changes the sound, the pitch lowering as the water's journey continues. You remember that the energy in each drop comes from its fall. Gravity pulls it downward, and when it lands, that energy is released as a combination of motion, heat, and sound. Most of the heat is too small to feel, but the sound that you can hear shapes your sense of the rain's presence. Without sound, the rain would be less alive to you, less immediate. A small puddle has formed near the curb, its surface broken by the steady fall of drops. Each impact creates a ripple, a circle expanding outward until it meets another circle, the two blending into complex, fleeting patterns. If you could hear those ripples, they would be tiny waves of sound, softer than a whisper. Instead, you hear only the gentle hiss they make as a group, the sound of countless impacts merging into one voice. You crouch for a moment, letting your eyes trace the movement on the water's surface. The pattern is hypnotic, order and chaos coexisting in each second. And beneath it, unseen, molecules of water are colliding, rearranging, forming new paths for the energy to move through. Every drop is both an end and a beginning, the conclusion of its fall, the start of its joining with the rest. Standing again, you notice how your own hearing adjusts the longer you listen. At first, you were aware only of the louder sounds, the drops on leaves, roofs, and pavement. Now you catch the softer ones, the faint tapping of rain against your coat sleeve, the distant dripping from a sign above a shop. Your brain is filtering less, allowing more detail in. It is as though the rain has taught you its language, and now you can hear more of what it has to say. You think about how the human ear is tuned to certain frequencies, ranges of pitch that carry meaning in speech and survival. Rain falls within this range, not too low to be felt only as vibration, not too high to be lost in silence. It sits in the middle, where your hearing is most sensitive, speaking directly to your resting mind. A drop lands on your lips. It tastes of the sky, faintly mineral, with a trace of something green carried from the leaves above. The taste, the sound, the feel of it all blur together into one experience. Rain is not just a thing you hear, it is a presence you meet with every sense. The music around you continues, shifting slightly as the rain grows steadier. Somewhere behind you, the drain pipe now sings with a fuller voice, its water moving faster. Ahead, a rooftop sends its runoff into a narrow stream that leaps into the street with a sharp, playful splash. Even in the quiet, there are notes of movement, of small dramas playing out in the meeting of water and world. You breathe in, slow and deep, and realize that the sound is changing again. Not because of where the water falls, but because of something in the air itself. There is a new edge to the drops, a softened hush in the background, and along with it, a scent begins to rise. You step under the sloping roof of a small wooden shed, the kind that has been here for years, perhaps decades. The air is still cool from the evening rain, but a touch warmer now that you're out of the open. Above you, droplets land on the roof's old tin panels, and the sound changes everything. At first, it is a scattered tapping like a painter's brush striking the edge of a jar. Then, slowly, the pattern grows steady, and your ears begin to follow it without effort. You notice how some drops strike near the edges, ringing with a higher tone, while others land on the flatter center, producing a deeper, softer thud. It's as if the roof itself has become an instrument, and the rain is its gentle musician. Your brain loves this kind of rhythm. It has been listening for patterns since before you were born, attuning itself to the steady beat of your mother's heartbeat, to the pulse of waves, to the gentle swing of breath. When you hear the rain on the roof, your neural circuits search for repetition. And when they find it even loosely, imperfectly, they release tiny bursts of relaxation. This is the magic of predictability. Your brain feels safe when it knows what will happen next. Every roof, every surface sings differently. The material matters: tin, wood, tile, each creates its own tone. The angle matters too. A steep slope might let drops roll off quickly, creating light and fleeting sounds, while a flatter roof gathers water until it spills in slow, liquid sheets. Even the age of the roof plays a role. Wood softened by years of weather makes a warmer sound than metal fresh from the factory. You close your eyes, and science becomes a picture in your mind. Imagine each raindrop as a tiny drummer's stick, traveling from a cloud miles above, gathering speed through the air, and striking the roof with a precise, miniature performance. The surface sends a vibration through the air toward you, a vibration your eardrum catches like a net. From there, the sound travels deeper into the labyrinth of your inner ear, turning movement into electricity, electricity into perception. And somewhere in that quiet inner world, your brain doesn't just hear the rain, it feels it. There's another reason this sound is so soothing. It's called pink noise. Unlike the sudden peaks and valleys of city sounds or alarms, pink noise has a balanced distribution of frequencies. Rain on a roof falls into this category. It is neither too sharp nor too flat, neither too quiet to ignore nor too loud to disturb. Studies show that pink noise can help synchronize brain waves during sleep, encouraging the slow, restorative rhythms that leave you feeling rested. You take a slow breath, noticing how easily your thoughts align with the sound. When a drop hits close by, it feels intimate, as though it was meant for you alone. When a small cascade runs off the roof's edge, you hear the softness of water joining water, pooling in the soil. There's a sense of belonging in this, as if you and the rain are not separate events but the same long story, written in different shapes. Your mind wanders gently. You think of the first humans who heard this sound, long before there were roofs. They must have listened to rain on the leaves of great trees, on the skins of their shelters, on the stones of caves. The rhythm above would have been a companion, a signal that the outside world was alive but not threatening. Perhaps it told them the same thing it tells you now. You are safe here, you can rest. You lean against the wall, letting the sound fill the spaces between your breaths. Your body knows what to do in moments like this. Heart rate slows, muscles soften. The tension in your shoulders, which you didn't even know you were carrying, begins to melt. The rain keeps its steady conversation, and you realize that nothing is required of you. No reply, no decision, no effort. Somewhere between listening and drifting, you notice that the rhythm changes. It isn't louder, but it feels closer, as if the rain has leaned in to tell you something. You imagine the roof above as a drum skin, stretched across the night sky, and the clouds as patient players, keeping time until you fall into sleep. This moment could last forever, but you know that rain has its own life, its own places to visit. Soon, the rhythm will fade, the drops will thin, and the roof will return to its silence. But for now, you are here, and the rain is here, and nothing else needs to be. You wonder softly, without urgency, what happens to the sound once it leaves the roof and meets the ground. Where does the rhythm go when it's no longer above your head? You walk now through the softened streets, where the rain has finished its gentle work above. The air is cool, the pavement darkened, and a faint smell of stone and soil drifts up from the ground. Each step you take carries the echo of the rain's earlier rhythm, a beat the city has absorbed. Beneath your feet, something quiet is happening. You cannot see it, but it is there. Water moving through unseen tunnels, some carved by nature, others built by human hands. The city you know above with its lamps, its storefronts, its crossing lights is mirrored by a hidden city below, one that never sees the sun but feels the rain as intimately as you do. It begins simply. Every drop that touches the ground seeks a way downward. Some slip through the cracks in the pavement, finding soft soil beneath. Others trickle into gutters, guided by the gentle slope of the streets. From there, they enter the dark mouths of drains, quiet gateways into another world. If you could follow them, you would see water flowing in thin ribbons through the underground. Some paths are smooth, polished pipes of steel or concrete. Others are rough and earthen, lined with pebbles and clay. In both, the water moves with patience. It is not in a hurry. Even when pressed by gravity, it carries itself with a kind of slow certainty, as if remembering the clouds it came from. There is science here woven into the stillness. The stormwater system, the network of drains and channels, is like a circulatory system for the city. When rain falls, it can't simply vanish. It must be moved, guided, stored. Engineers design these systems to keep streets from flooding, but nature participates too. The ground, when it can, drinks deeply, filtering the water through layers of soil and stone. This process, called infiltration, is older than any city. It cleans the water, one grain of sand at a time, before it continues its journey deeper into the earth. Some of the rain's memories will travel far. It will join underground streams that predate the streets above, rivers that run in darkness, carrying clear water through bedrock carved over thousands of years. You imagine these secret rivers, their quiet surfaces reflecting no sky, their paths untouched by wind. The only movement comes from the water itself, guided by slopes so gentle you might not notice them if you stood beside it. The city above rarely thinks about this hidden world. People walk, drive, talk, work, and sleep while beneath them, the rain is being carried away, transformed, stored. The process is constant, as reliable as breathing. Without it, streets would flood, foundations would weaken, and the life above would be unsettled. You pause at a street corner. The hum of a distant car fades. Somewhere near your feet, you hear a low, almost musical sound of water moving through a grate, its voice echoing in the hollow space below. For a moment, it feels like the city is whispering to itself, telling stories it only shares with those who listen. In your mind, you picture the rain as it was earlier today, falling from clouds, striking rooftops, sliding into gutters. Now, that same water is down there, flowing unseen. Some of it will reach treatment plants, where filters and basins remove what the journey has collected. Some will be released into nearby rivers, their surfaces shimmering under moonlight. And some will sink even deeper, becoming part of aquifers, ancient stores of water resting in the pores of stone, held there for years, decades, even centuries. Science tells us that water beneath the ground moves much slower than water in rivers. In some places, it creeps only a few centimeters in a day. It is patient. It has no need for haste. This slow movement is part of the Earth's balance, ensuring that when the sky is dry, there is still water below to sustain plants, animals, and people. You think about how much of life happens unseen. Just as this water moves in darkness, our own thoughts often flow beneath the surface of our minds, quiet but shaping the landscapes of who we are. The parallels are gentle, but you feel them. The air above smells faintly of rain still, even though the clouds have moved on. Somewhere in the city, a drain releases water into a canal, where it merges with a larger flow. The canal bends away, disappearing behind buildings, carrying with it a mix of tonight's rain and the memory of storms from days past. You imagine tracing its path out of the city, past the suburbs, through fields where the night insects sing. You would find it widening, deepening, blending with the river that runs to the sea. And there, the rain's journey would change once again, becoming part of something vast and ancient, touched by tides and moonlight. But that is for another time. For now, you stand still, aware of the water beneath you, the ground supporting you, and the hidden connections between what is visible and what is not. You feel the quiet satisfaction of knowing that even when the rain is gone from the sky, it continues to move, to nourish, to sustain. A small ripple of wind passes through the street, carrying the faint sound of water draining somewhere nearby. It is a reminder, not everything you need to feel has to be seen. Some things, like underground rivers and unspoken thoughts, can simply be known in the stillness. The ground beneath you seems to hum not with electricity or traffic, but with the steady pulse of water finding its way. You let that sound settle into you, knowing that somewhere ahead in your path, the journey of the rain will surface again, transformed yet familiar. The rain falls at a steady tempo now. No hurried splashes, no sharp interruptions, just a quiet persistence that fills the air with something like music. You stand still, your eyes half closed, feeling the sound not only in your ears, but deep inside your chest. It's not just noise, it's a pulse, a pattern, a rhythm that feels like it has been playing for thousands of years. You take a breath, and without meaning to, your lungs match its timing. A long inhale, a softer exhale. The drops tap against leaves in clusters, like a slow drumbeat layered with the whisper of wind. Somewhere, deeper in the soil, water trickles in thin threads, weaving itself between grains of sand, feeding roots that do not sleep. You imagine them waking, stretching, drinking. It's strange how the rain outside and the rhythm inside begin to blend. Your heart does not race here. It listens. You notice how it has its own music, a cycle of contraction and release, mirroring the ebb and flow above you. The science is simple, but it feels like magic. Your nervous system listens to patterns. When a rhythm is slow and even like these drops, your body begins to sync with it. It's called entrainment, the natural tendency of biological rhythms to align with external ones. Birds roost when daylight fades. Flowers close when darkness comes. Your heart, too, can sway to the rain's gentle metronome. You picture the drops as messengers. Each one lands with a small note of instruction. Slow down, breathe deeper, rest here. The sound travels through your ears, where tiny bones, the malleus, incus, and stapes pass the vibrations inward. They don't just deliver sound, they send messages to your brain's timing centers. Your brain listens, then whispers to your body, "We are safe. We can slow our pulse now." The ground beneath your feet has its own slow heartbeat. You can feel it if you stay still enough. Rainwater gathers in unseen channels, following ancient paths down to aquifers. Some of this water will stay hidden underground for years, moving at a pace so slow it makes even this quiet night feel fast. Yet it is all connected to the clouds above, the rivers below, and you standing in between. You think of how every living thing carries a rhythm. The wings of moths beat in perfect patterns to stay afloat in the damp air. The nocturnal frogs call out in repeated notes, matching the rain's pace. Even the stars, though silent, have their own cycles, turning the night slowly overhead. Your own rhythm has been hurried for too long. You realize this now in the stillness. Days filled with rushing have left your body tuned to a tempo too quick for the soul. But here, under this patient sky, your pace shifts. Not all at once, but like a tide slowly receding from the shore. You take a step forward, feeling the soft give of the wet earth. In your mind's eye, you trace the water's journey. Vapor rising from oceans, condensing into clouds, drifting for miles before falling as rain. And now, those drops shaped in the sky meet the soil and the roots in you. Somewhere, Lightning may be flashing far away. You cannot hear the thunder here, only the clean repetition of falling drops. That repetition is important. Your brain loves it not because it's exciting, but because it is predictable. Predictability is a rare and quiet medicine. It tells the nervous system, nothing dangerous for miles before falling as rain is coming, you may rest. And in this safety, your body begins a deeper work. The parasympathetic system, the rest and digest network, takes the lead. Your breathing deepens, muscles soften, even your skin feels warmer. You are no longer simply hearing rain, you are part of it. You tilt your head back, eyes half shut, and let the drops touch your face. There's a slight variation in each one. Some land heavier, some lighter, but still they fall in time. A heartbeat for the earth. You think of how your own heart has been beating since before you could remember, carrying you through every day without asking for applause. Simply keeps time, like the rain. The thought feels comforting. Maybe the rain is the earth's way of remembering, too. Remembering that growth needs pauses, that replenishment comes from slowing, from soaking in what arrives, rather than chasing what's still distant. Somewhere in the distance, you hear the faint sound of a stream overflowing, water tumbling over stones. The rain feeds it steadily, and the stream responds with a voice of its own, faster, more urgent, yet still part of the same orchestra. You picture the rain's beat and the stream's flow as different sections of a single song. And if you listen closely, you can almost hear your own heartbeat in its rhythm. The air feels cooler now, the night deeper. You wonder how many creatures are sleeping to this same song. Birds with their heads tucked beneath wings, foxes curled in dens, fish resting in still pools beneath riverbanks. Every heartbeat in the forest is keeping time with the rain. And you, standing here, are no longer just an observer. You are inside the rhythm now. The drops fall and your breath follows. Your breath slows and the world seems to answer. You know this moment will not last forever. Rain always passes, but the rhythm it teaches remains. You will carry it forward, the way the soil holds water long after the clouds have moved on. The thought makes you smile faintly. Even when the sound fades, the body remembers. And maybe if you stay quiet enough, you'll hear it still, beneath the noise of the next day. The rain continues, steady as ever. The night deepens. You close your eyes, and you begin to wonder if this is the earth's heartbeat. Then what other rhythms wait, hidden beneath the sound of falling water? You tilt your head back, letting the rain speckle your cheeks. Above, the clouds are not scattered by accidents. They are threads in a larger tapestry, one that stretches far beyond the reach of your eyes. Somewhere over the ocean, days ago, a breath of wind began. It pressed against the surface of the water, lifting tiny droplets into the air. These droplets joined others, becoming vapor, becoming invisible travelers in the high atmosphere. They gathered quietly, without urgency. Now they are here. But the journey they took was not direct. They followed what scientists call atmospheric rivers, long, narrow corridors of concentrated moisture flowing through the sky. If you could see them from space, they would look like transparent serpents, curling across continents. Some are thousands of kilometers long, carrying more water than the Amazon River, though they glide in silence, unnoticed by most. You imagine them as great, slow rivers you could drift upon, lying in a wooden boat. The current is not fast. It is patient. It does not rush because it has no finish line, only a cycle to complete. This is the first lesson the sky teaches: movement without hurry. Your breath slows. The patter of rain becomes a clock with no numbers. In your mind, you trace the path of one of these aerial rivers, starting over a warm stretch of Pacific Ocean. Sunlight glitters on the water, lifting vapor like ghosts rising from a calm sea. Warm winds nudge this vapor into the air's higher lanes, where the temperature is cooler and the invisible river begins to form. Days pass. Winds guide it eastward, a slow migration. Below, Cities wake and sleep without ever knowing they are under its shadow. Mountains rise in the distance, and here the river is forced upward, squeezed by the earth's shape. This is when it begins to spill its treasure as rain. The drop on your cheek might have been part of that journey. It might have traveled for days or even weeks, carried by patterns older than memory. And now it rests here, its voyage complete. You notice how this mirrors the mind before sleep. Thoughts, like moisture, drift from one place to another. They gather slowly, moving in quiet streams that you don't always see. Some thoughts form in the warm seas of your day's experiences. Others are pulled in by currents from the deep ocean of memory. And then, eventually, they meet the mountain of rest and fall as dreams. You stand beneath the rain, and you feel yourself part of this migration. Not apart from it, but inside it like a molecule of water in a great cycle. The river in the sky flows whether you see it or not, and it will continue long after you are gone. The science behind it is gentle here, like background music. Warm ocean waters evaporate under sunlight. Winds, shaped by the rotation of the earth, funnel this moisture into narrow pathways. These corridors can carry up to 25 times the water in the Mississippi River, all suspended invisibly in the air. When they reach land, especially mountain ranges, the air rises, cools, and releases its burden as rain or snow. You picture the clouds overhead as slow-moving caravans, carrying water in delicate jars. The rain is the sharing of that water, a gift poured out over the land. Your footsteps make small splashes in the puddles forming at your feet. Each ripple moves outward, making circles that touch and overlap, just like the way weather patterns touch and overlap in the atmosphere. There is a comfort in knowing that the rain on your skin has traveled so far, through so many unseen paths, before arriving here. It makes you think about patience, how nature carries things without complaint, without pause, without any need for praise. If the sky can take days to deliver a single drop of rain, perhaps you can give yourself the same kindness. No rush, no demand for immediate resolution. The river of your thoughts will arrive where it is meant to. You close your eyes and listen for the deeper layer of sound in the rain, the way it changes pitch as it hits leaves, water, and stone. Every surface gives it a different voice, like an orchestra of tiny instruments. Somewhere far above, the river is still flowing. You imagine yourself floating on it. The air cool around you, clouds forming walls on either side. Feels weightless, endless. The horizon is only mist. There is no shore to reach. Your body sways a little, as if rocked by the gentle current. Your breathing matches its rhythm. Long inhales, slower exhales. You feel almost transparent, like the vapor that began this journey. In the deep, slow quiet of this moment, you understand something without words. Everything is always in motion, even when it feels still. The clouds are moving, the rivers in the sky are flowing, the rain is falling, and even your thoughts, the ones you think are stuck, are drifting along an unseen current toward their own release. The science, the poetry, the feeling, they all merge here. The atmospheric river becomes not just a weather event, but a mental model. Your mind is a sky, your thoughts are moist, the winds are your shifting moods, and the mountains are the thresholds of change. And the rain is the gentle letting go. You open your eyes again to the sight of droplets hanging from the ends of branches. Each one reflects the gray light in a tiny, perfect world. You know they will fall soon, pulled by gravity, just as you, too, will fall into sleep. Above, the river in the sky flows on, unconcerned with where each drop lands. It only knows how to move and to give. And as you watch it, you feel a question rise, not to be answered, but simply to be carried. If the rivers above can cross oceans in silence, what quiet distances might you travel tonight? You notice it first as a faint haze around the far lamp, a softness that wasn't there before. The rain has shifted into something finer, gentler, the kind of drizzle that seems to hang in the air more than it falls. The ground reflects each light like a shy mirror, and the air between you and the lamps begins to shimmer with something alive. As you walk closer, you see it clearly as a halo, a perfect ring of gold wrapped around the streetlight's face, trembling slightly with each gust of wind. It feels otherworldly, as if the rain has taken on a purpose beyond falling now. It paints with light. What you're seeing is a dance of physics, tiny and constant. Each raindrop becomes a lens, bending and scattering the light in every direction. The moisture in the air forms a million small pathways for light to travel, and instead of going straight, it diffuses outward, wrapping the lamp in its soft embrace. In dry air, light behaves more predictably: crisp edges, clean shadows. But tonight, in the wet, cool mist, the rules loosen. The droplets take the light and scatter it, much like how sunlight becomes red and orange at the horizon. It's called mist scattering, a phenomenon that doesn't depend much on wavelength, which is why the halos keep their warm streetlight glow rather than shifting to a rainbow. You step into one of these glowing circles and feel for a moment like you've crossed into another realm. The air is denser here, not in weight but in presence, as though you are inside the very breath of the lamp. The halo around you changes subtly as you move, shifting in brightness and size, an invisible conversation between your position, the raindrops, and the bulb. You tilt your head back, and the glow seems to melt into the falling rain above. Each drop catches the light for only a fraction of a second before it falls into shadow. Yet together they make something continuous, a golden veil between you and the night. You realize that the halo is not really there, fixed in space. It exists only because you are looking, only because the geometry between your eyes, the droplets, and the lamp allows it. You pass into another pool of light, and the previous halo fades behind you, becoming dim and ordinary again. It makes you think about how many moments of beauty depend entirely on where you stand. A few steps forward, a different angle, and the magic shifts or disappears entirely. The street itself becomes a chain of glowing islands, each one surrounded by a shimmering moat of rain. You begin to walk slower, letting your eyes rest on each halo, as if they were paintings hung in the gallery of the night. Sometimes the glow is faint, like a ghost just beginning to form. Sometimes it blazes strong, as if the lamp is trying to warm the rain with its own light. You notice how sound behaves differently here. The patter of rain grows softer beneath each halo, almost muffled. Perhaps it is only your perception, but you feel as if the glow itself absorbs a little of the noise, holding you in a gentler pocket of air. Light, moisture, and silence all conspiring to slow your steps. You remember that your eyes are not perfect instruments. They adapt, change, and sometimes even trick you. The halos, while rooted in physics, also carry the influence of your own sight. The moisture in the tear film across your eye's surface can scatter light in its own way, adding to the luminous blur. It means that, in a sense, part of the halo is in the rain and part is in you. The thought comforts you, as if you are not just a bystander to beauty but a participant. Without you, without your vision and your stillness, this particular halo would never exist in exactly this form. The rain would still fall, the lamp would still glow, but this exact crown of light is yours alone. You linger at one lamp for longer than you expect. The rain begins to bead on your coat, tracing little rivers down the sleeves. The halo shifts subtly with each drop that clings to your eyelashes, refracting the light in its own miniature arcs. It feels like standing inside a breathing organism alive with water and light, but completely at peace. Somewhere beyond the glow, the night continues. Cars pass now and then, their headlights cutting temporary halos in the mist. They are brighter, more abrupt, but they carry the same secret. Every beam is changed by the water it touches. Nothing leaves this wet night untouched. Not light, not sound, not even you. You take a final step out of the circle of light and into the dimmer stretch of road. The halo you leave behind seems to shrink, becoming ordinary again. But you know it's still there, waiting for the next pair of eyes to walk through. And as you continue, the rain feels different, not heavier or lighter, just more connected to the light that falls with it. The halos ahead glow faintly, calling you forward like distant beacons. They remind you that even in darkness, there are quiet places where light lingers, softened and reshaped by the world around it. You begin to wonder what other shapes the rain might make, what other patterns wait in the night sky above you, invisible until the right angle reveals them. You lean closer to the window, watching the rain as it gathers into trembling beads. Some droplets slide slowly down the glass, leaving thin, silvery trails, while others hold their place, quivering with the faint vibration of distant thunder. You realize that each drop carries not just water, but time itself, a fragment of the Earth's oldest memory. The drop on the glass before you may have once been part of a deep ocean current, swirling in darkness beneath Antarctic ice. It may have once drifted through a jungle's canopy, hidden among leaves while a bird called out in the dawn. Perhaps it fell on a desert centuries ago, vanishing into sand before finding its way back to the sky. Water is a traveler, and unlike you, it never stops its journey. Science calls it the hydrological cycle, the unending loop of evaporation, condensation, and precipitation. But those words feel too still for something so alive. Imagine it instead as a great circle of breath, the planet's inhale and exhale, where oceans lift into the sky and clouds fall back into rivers. Each drop is both ancient and new. Outside, rain patters against the leaves of a tree. That sound, soft and repetitive, is more than white noise. It is the echo of countless reunions. When rain meets earth, it is returning home, even if only for a moment before the journey begins again. You picture a single droplet leaving the sea. The sun warms its surface, loosening its grip on the liquid body it has known for so long. Molecule by molecule, it rises into the air as invisible vapor. Carried upward by warm currents, it begins to cool, finding its way into a growing cloud. There it mingles with other travelers, each from a different place. Mountain snow, river mist, breath from a sleeping deer. Inside the cloud, the droplet clings to tiny particles of dust, pollen, and salt from faraway shores. Slowly, together, they grow heavier until gravity calls them back down. And so the droplet falls through wind, through shifting light, through the layers of your own waiting silence until it touches the world once more. It's strange to think you might drink the same water that dinosaurs once drank, or that a storm cloud above you may hold the same molecules that once fell as rain on ancient cities now buried in sand. Water holds no opinion, no attachment. It simply continues, changing shape but never truly disappearing. Your gaze returns to the window. The droplets now form thin streams, merging together before slipping beyond the sill. You think of how these small rivers on the glass mirror the great rivers on Earth, each one tracing a path shaped by the land. Eventually, they will join with larger bodies of water, and their molecules will begin the long journey toward the sky. In this cycle, there is no beginning and no end, only change. Scientists call this state equilibrium, a balance maintained not by stillness, but by motion. Just as your breathing does not stop to keep you alive, the planet's water must always move. You take a slow breath, letting your chest rise and fall in rhythm with the rain. The air feels cooler now, touched by the storm's breath. You think of how the smell of rain petrichor comes from oils released by plants and compounds in the soil stirred up by falling water. This scent is not the rain itself, but the conversation between rain and earth, a language older than any spoken word. Somewhere far away, rain is falling on the open ocean, sinking deep enough to join the great conveyor belt of currents that take centuries to complete their path. Somewhere else, it is falling as snow, stacking layer upon layer into a glacier that will not melt for hundreds of years. Water can be swift or slow, but it never stops remembering where it has been. You begin to think of your own memories, the ones that surface often, and the ones hidden deep below. Like water, they shift and change, sometimes evaporating into something less solid, sometimes condensing into a moment you can almost touch again. Your mind, too, has its own cycle, its own quiet way of carrying the past into the present. A droplet slides down the glass and clings briefly to the wooden frame before vanishing into the space beyond. It reminds you that no journey is truly lost. Even when something leaves your sight, it continues elsewhere, in a form you may not recognize. In the stillness of your room, the rain's rhythm becomes your heartbeat. You are part of this endless exchange, breathing in air that once passed through the lungs of a forest, drinking water that once flowed through the veins of a glacier. You are not separate from the rain's memory. You are written into it. And as you sit here, the thought brings a strange peace. Nothing is ever truly gone. Simply changes, moves, begins again in a place you might never see. Outside, the storm softens, the drops falling farther apart. The glass begins to clear. Somewhere above, the clouds are breaking, their vapor rising to meet the next wind. You wonder where this rain will go next, whose window it will touch, whose thirst it will quench, whose story it will quietly carry. The rain slows, but you can still hear its final notes. You feel as if you've been entrusted with a secret, that the world is not as fragile as it seems, that its cycles are vast enough to hold all that is lost and all that returns. Your eyes follow one last droplet as it slides downward, pausing now and then before it disappears from view. The path it leaves is faint but certain. Like all water, it knows where it's going. And you find yourself wondering not about endings, but about what happens after the glass is clear, after the sky is still, after the rain has moved on to its next chapter. You wake to a quieter sky. The rain has stopped, yet the world still holds its presence in scent, in sheen, in the subtle weight of air. Every step you take leaves a soft imprint in damp earth. The ground remembers. Moisture rises faintly, invisible fingers of vapor lifting back toward the clouds that once gave it. This is the water cycle's gentle afterthought, not the drama of falling rain, but the patience of its staying. When a droplet sinks into the soil, it does not disappear. It finds a path between grains of sand and threads of root, sinking deeper, feeding what lies below. You walk along a narrow lane where puddles have gathered in uneven hollows. Each one holds its own reflection. Pale sky, crooked branch, the shifting shape of your silhouette. A breeze brushes the surface, and the image bends, softens, reforms. You notice that even here, stillness is never truly still. Science tells us that the ground can hold rain for days, weeks, even years. Beneath your feet, aquifers rest in ancient stone, cradling water that once fell centuries ago. Some of the moisture that touches your skin today might have begun its journey in another time, another season, another place entirely. In this way, the rain is both fleeting and eternal. You reach down and touch a puddle with your fingertips. The water is cool, not the sharp cold of winter, but a quiet coolness that speaks of shadows and stone. Ripples expand outward, each ring gentler than the last, until the surface becomes whole again. The pattern reminds you of the breath, the inhale that stirs, the exhale that settles. Above, the leaves still carry rain. Drops cling to their edges, magnifying the fine lines of their veins. When one drop falls, it is slow, reluctant to play a final note after the orchestra has gone silent. And yet, when it lands, it carries the same perfection as the very first drop that began the storm. You pass a small stream swollen from the night's rain. Its surface is restless, but its movement is purposeful, carrying water toward rivers, lakes, and eventually the sea. There, the sun will lift it once more into the sky, shaping clouds that will someday return. You think of this endless circulation, how water travels through air, earth, plant, and body. In your own cells, too, rain finds a place to rest. You pause by a stone wall draped in moss. The moss drinks from the dampness in the air, pulling water in without roots, storing it in delicate tissues. This green feels richer today, more alive. It teaches you something about taking only what is needed, holding it gently, and releasing it when the time is right. A robin lands nearby, hopping through the wet grass, tips its head toward the ground, searching, listening. The rain has brought worms closer to the surface, drawn by the softened soil. Even in its absence, rain continues to shape life. You begin to notice how the soundscape has shifted. The patter of falling drops is gone, replaced by drips from eaves, splashes from branches, the quiet hiss of wet gravel underfoot. These are the after rhythms, the slower measures in the composition. If rain is the music, this is its echo. As you walk, your mind follows the water underground, through layers of earth, past tiny stones smoothed by time, weaving between root hairs that pull it upward into leaves. From leaf to air, it drifts away unseen, joining the breath of the forest. You realize that even now, at this very moment, a part of the rain is already leaving, starting its journey again. The air smells of minerals and green things. This is parature, the perfume of rain-soaked soil releasing molecules stirred loose by moisture. It rises around you, subtle and grounding, like the memory of a voice calling from far away. Scientists tell us that this scent comes from compounds like geosmin, created by microorganisms in the soil. Yet knowing its name does not lessen its mystery, it deepens it. You step through a meadow where blades of grass bend beneath the weight of droplets. Your passing shakes them loose, and they slide down to the roots, vanishing from sight but not from the cycle. Here, the rain's gift is stored quietly, shared slowly. In your mind, you see the clouds that have already moved on, far beyond the horizon. They no longer hold the water you felt last night, but somewhere else, someone is feeling the first drop of their own storm. Perhaps they too are standing still, eyes closed, letting the rain meet their skin. The light shifts as the sun pushes through thinning clouds. Its warmth draws a faint mist from the fields, a soft veil that blurs the edges of everything. Shapes become gentler, colors less certain, as if the world is still waking from a dream. You walk through it slowly, breathing in the mix of cool and warm. Each step takes you deeper into the truth that rain never truly ends. It only changes form, only changes place. In you, too, there are echoes of every rain you've ever known. The cool morning of your childhood, the heavy summer downpour that soaked you to the skin, the night you listened for hours to a roof's gentle percussion, unable to sleep but unwilling to stop listening. You reach a bench by the edge of a small pond. Its surface is still, holding a perfect reflection of the sky, so perfect that you can almost forget it is water. A single drop falls from a branch overhead, shattering the image into 100 pieces. Then slowly, almost reluctantly, they come together again. You realize that the rain's true beauty is not only in its arrival, but in its lingering, the way it stays quietly, offering life in ways unseen. In your mind, this becomes a kind of promise, that even when moments seem to pass, their essence can remain, nourishing you from within. You close your eyes and listen. There is no urgency in this sound, no rush, just the slow breathing of a world that has drunk deeply. The day will move on, the puddles will shrink, the air will grow lighter. But the rain is not gone, it is only elsewhere, perhaps already rising again, gathering, preparing. And you, like the earth, hold a little of it still. You lie still, eyes closed, as the rain folds itself into the quiet. What was once a steady rhythm has softened into scattered notes, each one a farewell from the sky. The The storm that began with a single drop has lived its entire life above you in vapor, dancing in wind, finding its way down, and now it rests, its voice fading like a song you almost remember. The air in your room feels different now, cooler, fresher, holding the faint scent of earth renewed. That fragrance is geosmin, the invisible gift released from the soil when rain kisses it. You didn't see it, but the molecules found their way to you, stirring something older than memory. It is the same scent that may have reached your ancestors thousands of years ago in their own quiet shelters. In this way, rain has always been a message between the earth and whoever is listening. You think of the journey it took for each droplet to arrive here. It began in sunlight, water warming, lifting invisibly from oceans, rivers, and leaves. It rose into the high, cool air where tiny crystals formed, merging, gathering weight, falling again in graceful surrender. And somewhere along the way, each drop carried a little of the places it had been. Salt from the sea, pollen from a flower, dust from far-off hills. A drop that touched your window tonight may have been a snowflake in the Himalayas a year ago, or mist over the Amazon forest, or steam above a desert road. Rain is not only water, it is memory, traveling endlessly in circles, never truly gone. The rhythm that lulled you tonight is a rhythm your brain understands deeply. Inside you, cells and signals respond to patterns. The steady beat of rain is like a gentle metronome for your mind, a sound that slows thought without demanding silence. When sound is too constant, your attention drifts. When it is too random, your mind stays alert. Rain, in its quiet variation, offers just enough pattern to comfort, and just enough change to keep you from waking. Some scientists call this the pink noise, effect softer than white noise, richer in low tones. Pink noise mirrors the way energy naturally moves in our environment, from the rustle of leaves to the hum of distant waves. Your brain's electrical rhythms, the slow delta waves of deep sleep, resonate with it. Perhaps this is why, listening to rain, you felt time slip away so easily. In your mind, the evening has become a story of water. From Chapter 1's first raindrop brushing your cheek, to the rivers forming in Chapter 7, to the quiet floodplains in Chapter 9, each scene felt like both a place and a thought. You have traveled without moving, yet your inner landscape has shifted. You picture the clouds now, lighter and emptier, drifting apart in the high air. They are changing shape even as you imagine them. Some are heading toward mountains, where they will brush against peaks and shed the last of their rain. Others will stretch thin until they vanish into the blue. Tomorrow, the cycle begins again. There is a lesson in this, not as a rule, but as a rhythm. Rain does not rush to the ground. It forms, it gathers, it releases when the moment is right. It falls because it has reached a fullness it can no longer hold. And when it is done, it lets go entirely. Perhaps your thoughts can do the same. You can let them gather in their own time, let them fall gently when they are ready, and let them pass when their season has ended. Not everything must be carried forever. You shift slightly, feeling the slow heaviness in your limbs, the sign that sleep is near. The sound outside is now so faint that you're not sure if you're hearing rain or the echo of it in your mind. Both are enough. Somewhere in this softened space, your body systems are adjusting for night. Your heart rate slows. Your muscles release their small tensions. Your breathing finds a deeper rhythm, one that mirrors the rise and fall of ocean tides. Even your temperature has lowered, signaling to your brain that it is time to rest. All of this happens without effort, like the way rain knows how to fall. You are no longer following the rain story. You are inside it. There is a particular beauty to this closing moment. The edge between waking and sleep, when your mind is still aware but no longer holding on tightly. Thoughts arrive like gentle visitors and just as quickly drift away. You don't need to invite them to stay. Outside, a single drop falls from the gutter to the ground. You hear it clearly, as if it is the last line of a poem. Then another drop, then silence. The night has taken the rain into itself, and now it is yours to keep. It will return again, in another season, in another form, perhaps as mist over a meadow, or sleet tapping against a train window, or drizzle under the dim glow of a street lamp. But tonight, it has fulfilled its purpose. You breathe in, you breathe out. The last sound you hear is not rain, but the soft pulse of your own quiet body, proof that you too are part of this endless cycle. And as your mind loosens its last threads of waking thought, you carry with you the knowing that every drop, like every moment, is part of something far larger than itself. The rain is sleeping now, and so do you.